Okay, so we are going live. So if you can see us and hear us, please let us know. I'm looking on Crowdcast, specifically at you guys on Crowdcast, because it's counting down to when it goes live on Facebook. But this is this is the time to tell us whether you can hear us and see us. Yes, awesome. This is in. Look at this.
In the flesh.
In the flesh. In the Amplified Growth Studios. Yeah, so here we are. And oh, look at that. We've got like a little confidence monitor. I feel like I'm sitting closer than you are. So, hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This is a very special edition of Review Chat. And so we're going to go through talking about all kinds of exciting things today, but really the main focus is talking about ethics and online reviews. And so if you haven't ever been here before, know that we have review chat that happens on Crowdcast usually once a month. And we used to have like a, second Thursday of every month, but sometimes it falls on different Thursdays. You just can't ever tell. But
we do
Ben,
the best we can.
We do the best we can. But Ben, you're here in
I'm
town.
Here. Yes.
Yes. And we thought that it might be really exciting to talk about some stuff that is super hot for everybody, whether you're interested in online reviews or not, but especially if you're interested in online reviews. And so for those of you who are watching on Facebook and who are now watching on YouTube, let's go ahead and kick this off. Welcome to Review Chat. This is a monthly discussion about the business, marketing, ethics. Uh-oh, I see Mark saying it's hard to hear us. Can you hear us a little bit better now, Mark? I'll get started again. I don't want to go too far without you guys being able to hear us. Can you hear us okay now? Yes? Loud and clear. All right, Kevin. Hey. All right,
let's do this again.
Let's get started. Okay, from the top. Okay, it's for real now. Welcome to Review Chat. This is a monthly discussion about the business, marketing, ethics, and science behind online customer reviews. I'm the host of Review Chat, KiKi L'Italien, and for this show, we're talking about the ethics for online reviews. And our guest today is also my co-host, Ben Martin. So he's the guest. He's the co-host. He's also the executive director of the Review Society. So welcome, Ben.
I'm glad to be here, and it's so exciting to be doing this in the studio.
I am super excited for you to be in this studio too. I in fact, hesitate to call it the studio until today. Now it's official.
Yes, it is.
So I want to go ahead and kick this off because there have been a lot of questions about the ethics of online reviews. And in fact, not just recently, every time we have a discussion like this, it always ends up there's always something where it ends up talking about the ethics of online reviews.
It seems that way.
Yeah. I mean, every single time though.
Yep.
And so recently in the news, this has come to the forefront. And so can you talk to me a little bit about why is this reaching this fever pitch now? Like what's going on, Ben?
Well, so let me just preface this whole story by saying that I have no political involvement at all in this story. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other on what happened here. But I do think that the case study that I'm going to present to you, and this is like ripped from the headlines, that this really helps to illuminate this idea of the ethics of online reviews. So you probably remember that 2 weeks ago or so, the president's press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, was kicked out of a restaurant in Virginia. This is down in Lexington, Virginia.
Yeah.
And she was kicked out of the restaurant by the owner because she felt that Sarah's beliefs and the president's beliefs did not align with those of her and her staff. So she was politely asked to leave, and Miss Huckabee Sanders also politely left. But afterwards, she put out a tweet that said, "I was kicked out of this restaurant," and then obviously Trump got involved. Everybody knows about that. What, for me, then raised my antenna around the ethics of online reviews around this is that on both sides of the debate, there were people posting reviews for and against the restaurant owner on their Facebook page, on their Yelp, blah, blah, blah. I mean, this is called review bombing. And frankly, the people who were giving the reviews had never even patronized that establishment. Right. Which in my view, if you've never actually been a customer of a company, I think you have no right to review them. But it got worse, actually. So not only did the reviews start going up on the Red Hens restaurant review sites, both in Lexington, Virginia, but there were actually other Red Hen restaurants around the country, totally unaffiliated with the Red Hen in Lexington. They just happened to have the same name. One was in New Jersey. I think one was in Connecticut. There's one right here in DC, actually. And they all started getting negative reviews too, even though they had no involvement whatsoever.
They hadn't made the decision.
Yep.
They had nothing to do with it. They just shared the same name.
Right.
You know.
So it wasn't like a Burger King in Wisconsin kicks somebody out, and then by virtue of that, like all the Burger Kings.
Right. Or Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Like a good example.
That's another good example.
Yeah. Right.
Yep. So they've been in the news, in past years around this, and people have used the review as like a weapon.
Right.
So what really got the wheels turning is that I'm like, look, the people who work at these restaurants, especially the ones that aren't even the one in Lexington, Virginia, their incomes were probably affected by this review bombing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because their review rating probably has gone down, and so you're talking about busboys and dishwashers and servers, and I have a very good feeling that their income was actually affected by this review vigilantism, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of really sparked my interest in having this show about the ethics of online reviews.
Because like now you're actually seeing it. These are people's livelihoods, where if it's the Red Hen that's in DC, it has absolutely nothing to do with what happened to Sarah Huckabee Sanders in Lexington.
Yep.
Right. And hi, Ann. Hi. See you there. Then what do we need to do now? And I think it is a good time to talk about this, because there are ways that we've discussed on this show before, and that friends of ours have been working on to make sure that online reviews are the types of reviews that you can trust, that they've been verified, and that sort of thing. And I know we're going to go and get into that. But, reviewing a business that you haven't actually had an experience with, it seems very obviously unethical. But there are shades of gray, aren't there? Are there some shades of gray? So with that in mind, there's a little game that we'd like to play. Isn't that right, Ben?
That's right. And it needs a jingle.
But... I know. Eventually we're going to get there, guys. But but do you want to play a game? And if you're able to chat back, let us know. You want to play a game? Huh?
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes. We'll go ahead. We'll give you that one. So this is a game called Is It Ethical? And if you tweet about this or share it online, use the hashtag Is It Ethical?
In concert with the review chat.
Right. Because it could be, yeah.
You can't just do one hashtag.
That's right. Well, you could, but then you end up with all kinds of trouble.
Yes.
Don't be silly. So we're going to present 3 different scenarios, and you can respond back on Crowdcast through the poll, or you can respond back on Facebook Live, and we'll be looking at that. And thanks for the love. Thanks for the thumbs up. You guys, you know that when you give feedback on Facebook, it counts for a lot. So thank you, Kylie. I appreciate that. Yay. And thank you, Michael. So, okay. Do you want to get started?
Let's do this. So, all right. We're actually playing the game at reviewsociety.org too. So about once a day or maybe 4 times a week, I'll post a scenario. And I ask the question, what do you think about this scenario? Was this ethical? And so we're going to start with our first one here, which is actually this is based on true events. This actually was my personal experience. So here's the deal. You go to a Mexican restaurant with your family. And when you go into the restaurant, you see the hostess, and she asks you to wait for 10 minutes to get a table. Now you look past the hostess and you can see that there are empty tables everywhere, but she's still asking you to wait 10 minutes. And there's some other people waiting there too. So after a few minutes waiting, she seats you down with some chips and salsa and some water. And a few minutes go by and there's no waiter. And so you run out of chips and salsa. Like literally this happened to me. You run out of chips and salsa. You're getting frustrated. So you say, you know what, let me just go get my own chips and salsa. I can see them sitting over there. You get up, you go, you see the hostess, and you say, hey, we've been waiting for 10 minutes for our waiter. We haven't seen him yet. Can you send him over? She says yes. You blow through another thing of chips and salsa, and then you get really frustrated and you're saying, you know what, I've been sitting here for 10 minutes, I've had to serve myself, um, I've gotten through two bags or two bowls of chips and salsa, my family is ready to eat, so am I.
Yeah.
And you're like, let's forget it, I'm gonna get up
Yeah.
and I'm gonna leave. So you get into your car and you post a scathing Yelp review. I did this. Okay.
Oh, so you're admitting it.
Yeah,
I thought that this was supposed to be the
no,
secret. Like, this one actually happened to me.
no, I did it.
Okay. All right.
I wrote the negative review, and I have reflected on it, especially now that I have really gotten ingrained into review culture. I've warred with myself on whether or not I should remove that review. So
Yeah.
here's the question: is it ethical? So is the review that I posted ethical? And the reason that this one raises so many questions in my mind is that one of the things that I say to folks is you should not review a company unless you've been a customer of the company.
Yeah.
Now, I technically did not pay anything. Leave a
Oh.
tip. I didn't buy anything.
Yep.
So were my actions ethical?
So if you haven't responded to the poll right now, so there are several questions. You can't really tell what the stories are until we go through them. But the very first question has to do with this example. It has to do with the Mexican restaurant example. And just go ahead and give your feedback there. And then let's look over here on Facebook Live. And if you guys think it was ethical or not ethical, you can respond there. So, dun, da, da, da. Is it ethical? I really see this as being something that we call out at some point, right?
Like I said, I think we need a jingle.
I know. Okay. So Kevin, there are qualifying questions. Kevin says, "Did you experience the product or service?"
I certainly did.
Okay, but you didn't, and Anne says, "But you didn't buy anything because the service was so awful." Review ethical.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So, just for those who are watching later or listening later, the response was 4 votes, 100%. It is ethical. The negative review on the Mexican restaurant was ethical.
Okay.
Very interesting. Now, what about our second case study? What's our second example?
Okay. So this one is called Bubba's Trucking.
Bubba's Trucking. I thought it was Bubba's Hauling. Either way.
Either way.
Either way.
Yes, it is hauling. Okay, so here we go. You're driving down the interstate, minding your own business, and you pull up behind a Bubba's Hauling truck.
Yeah.
And you watch as a piece of gravel flies off of that truck and bounces onto your windshield and it cracks it. So, just to be safe, you write down the phone number for Bubba's Hauling, and you get home, and the crack is too big to repair. You need a whole new windshield.
Oh man.
So you call up Bubba's Trucking and you plead your case and you say, look, I was driving behind one of your trucks and a piece of gravel fell off and it hit my windshield. It cracked. Will you please reimburse me for the cost of replacing my windshield? And Bubba's Trucking says, no, we've got a little disclaimer on the back of the truck that says stay back 100 feet. And you say, well, I was back at least 100 feet. And they say, sorry, tough luck. That is not our problem.
Yeah.
And so you go onto Yelp or Facebook, or you go on and give a 1-star review, and the question is, would that be ethical?
Ooh.
So you're never a customer.
Ooh.
You have no need for hauling services from Bubba.
Yeah. So you haven't experienced. Yeah. Anne says tricky. And so if you're on Crowdcast, let me remind you that you have the opportunity to give us your response. Was Bubba's Hauling negative reviews, was it ethical? Is it ethical? And so while you are putting in your answer there, I'm looking over on Facebook Live, and Michael actually was talking about the previous example. He said, I don't know what you said in the post, right? And so that's a really good point. About the first example, I don't know what you said in the post in the review. So if you did not say something about, I love that you did this, by the way. I hope you have a screenshot of it ready to go.
I could make one, yes.
Yes, if you did not say something about the food versus the service. And then Sandra, hey Sandra, yay! I wish she were here too. Customer doesn't always equate with making a purchase. You had every intention of purchasing, but couldn't because the service was bad. I say it's ethical. Yes, right. I agree. Very good. Good work, you guys. All right. And so the people who are responding, Kevin says, that has nothing to do with the service this company provides. How can that be helpful to future actual or potential customers? Hazards of driving. Sorry they were jerks. Their insurance should cover it. And then Reed said, tarp should cover truck. May also be impossible to stay back 100 feet. Yeah, good point.
Yep.
So, excellent points. There are not so many people who responded on this one. Anne says, my challenge is ethical versus helpful. Maybe not helpful, but ethical, maybe. Ooh, this would this be an example of a shade of gray?
Definitely.
A shade of gray.
I think of the 3 that we're doing today, this is probably the most
the grayish.
Yeah, the most gray.
Yes. Okay. So excellent feedback. Oh, Kevin goes, people often make claims untrue against trucking companies. So they do need to protect themselves. The trucking companies do. Yes. Okay.
Yep, no question.
Excellent. So what say ye?
Should we move on to review number 3, or you want to rewind and hear my review about the Mexican restaurant?
I want to hear the review. What do you guys think? Yes? Yes? Do I hear a yes?
All right.
I'm actually just looking for a yes. So let's say
your answer goes, KiKi.
Yeah.
So. All right, here's my review. 1 star on Vallarta Mexican restaurant.
Okay.
20 minutes for nothing. Walked in. Hostess asked for 5 minutes while there were obviously 10 plus tables open for service. Sat down to some decent chips and salsa. No service for 5 to 10 minutes. I walked to the bar to figure out what was going on, grabbed an extra salsa from the bar and asked the hostess what was the deal. She said she would get a waiter for me right away. He never showed up. We left 5 minutes later.
Wow.
And I will admit, I was a little frustrated at the time.
You know what I love about this, though? This is
raw.
This is your raw. This is your version of raw, right?
Yeah,
This is probably pretty like nice, actually. It's not nice, but it's like as mean as you're gonna get online. So like,
well, people who know me know that I'm like one of the nicest people. Like, it's really hard to get me frustrated and riled up.
Russ is like, you complimented the chips and salsa.
I did. They were decent. There's no question.
It's so true. Like if I were angry, I would.
I mean, heck, I went back for more.
Oh, I know. Obviously, can you imagine the guacamole was probably amazing if you could ever get it
for real.
Okay, so that was a good example. So actually, yeah, you mentioned good things, but you never had a chance to say more good things because the service was so bad.
That is true. So I'm feeling justified.
I am too. Do you feel better now that you vented?
Yes.
Okay, and you got to share. That's so good.
So we got some more votes in actually on Bubba.
We did, and so now that people
50-50.
had it, it's 50-50. Bubba's hauling negative reviews. Is it ethical? Yes. 2 votes. No. 2 votes. So 50-50. All right, let's talk about your third example.
All right, here it comes.
Is it ethical?
Is it ethical?
Yes.
So a little bit of background on this one. Yelp has this program called the Ambassador Program, and these are like basically mega reviewers. These are people who just write loads and loads of reviews, and they're usually very helpful reviews too. And so those reviews ostensibly are more influential than the rank and file Yelp reviewer. So keep that in mind for this case study. All right, so here it comes. You're a Yelp ambassador who works early shifts as a nurse, and you live in a loft apartment on an increasingly popular street in your city. A new bar opens up right below your loft, and you like the bar a lot. You become a regular, and you give it a 5-star review using your Yelp status, your ambassador status. So eventually word starts to spread about this hot new place on this hot new street in town, and it becomes really, really popular, due perhaps in part to your own review. So with the increased popularity comes more business, and the patrons, as they leave the bar, tend to be very noisy late into the night. And of course, you're a nurse that works early shifts. So you complain to the management, but they say there's really nothing they can do about the patrons' behavior.
Oh man, so it went from being a good thing to a bad thing, right? This place is now the bane of your existence.
You still enjoy going to the bar during the day when you can, but late at night, these patrons are annoying. So they say, hey, sorry, there's nothing we can do. You can call the cops, but we can't control the behavior of our patrons, especially once they're outside of our establishment. So you update your review to 1 star, complaining that the bar is a bad neighbor. So
okay,
is
it ethical? So it has nothing to do with their service. It has nothing to do with the quality of their drink or ambiance, atmosphere, anything like that. It has to do with being a good neighbor.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what do you guys think? Poll is up on Crowdcast. So why don't you go ahead and give your votes? We only have one vote so far, so you guys have to go in and give us your feedback. Do you think it's ethical? Do you think this review, this negative review, is ethical? And over on Facebook Live, you guys can play too. Okay, some votes are coming in. I see it on Crowdcast. Yes, very good, you guys. And if you're playing on Facebook Live, go ahead. You can make a comment, and we might call you out on the comments. Not call you out in a bad way, call you out in a good way, like a shout out, right?
I'm trying to operate your computer, and
do
I'm
the
not so good
kids
at it.
do the kids still say shout out these days? I have no idea. I mean, I have a kid, but I don't think she says shout out. So there you go. All right. So we have, and there are 3 votes for no, it's not ethical, and 1 vote for yes. All right. So I want to just say that, and Anne's like, Bubba's just got another vote.
So where does that sort out now?
Yeah. So now Bubba is
60-40.
60-40
on the no side.
Yeah. All right. That's awesome. So
but everybody thought I was in the right, though.
Yeah, you still restaurant.
Okay.
Look at you.
See, I feel good.
Everybody's voting for you.
Yep.
By the way, and Kevin says if you chose if you chose to be living in the cool area, call it the circus district, then complain about the clowns and noisy elephants. Yeah. Right, exactly. I know. Yep. It's true. It's just part
Kevin
of it.
is always the voice of reason.
Right. Oh, and here's Sandra. She says, is part of a business's reputation based not only on product and service, but how they interact within the community? Oh, I know. It's such a good point, though. Gray.
Yep. It's definitely a gray area.
Shades of gray.
So here's another one that folks might remember. So this isn't actually a case study, but it's a case study, but you're not going to get to vote.
We don't have a poll question for this, but let's just go for it.
So remember the dentist who was the big game hunter a few years ago?
Yes.
And what did he shoot, a rhino or an elephant?
Whatever it was, I remember there was this huge issue after he came back with people who were like posting negative things. Yep. And I mean, it became quite the
And so that became a
story.
review bombing campaign.
Yeah.
And I read an article that was a really insightful analysis of this whole trend. Maybe we can put that into the show notes.
Okay.
I know it's posted at reviewsociety.org. I just can't remember where.
Yeah. But reviewsociety.org. By the way, call to action button on Crowdcast. You can click that. It'll open up a different window to take you to the Review Society. You can become a member right now for free. And you can actually play this game all the time because it's posted regularly there. Is it ethical? We all need this, right? To practice this. And so you definitely want to check that out when you get a chance. But okay.
So the rhino killer.
Rhino killer.
So the article that I read about this said, you know what? There are probably consumers out there who want to know if they are going to a dentist who is a rhino killer. So, even though I'm not a customer of that dentist, letting other people know that this is a rhino killer dentist, the author says, look, there's a legitimate reason that you and I might want to know that we think that our dentist or this dentist is doing things that aren't in line with our values.
Right.
And then we would choose whether or not we wanted to actually patronize that dentist. So I don't know. There's so many gray areas, and so there's ethics on the side of the reviewer. And in this case with the rhino, I think it was Yelp pulled down a lot of the reviews. So there's also an ethical situation for the review site operator as well.
Right. Well, and that's an interesting question because it isn't just the reviewers, right? It's not just the reviewers whose ethics can be questionable. Yep. It's actually there are other actors in the review economy who need to examine their ethical obligations. And so why don't we talk a little bit about that and maybe look at some of the online reputation management companies? Yeah.
So again, this is just such a for review geeks like us, like this is fun.
Hashtag review geeks.
Get down into the weeds on this stuff. Yeah. So let's talk about like online reputation management companies. Yeah. So if you're not familiar with them, there's kind of 2 different flavors of online reputation management companies. The first one is a product, where it's like a review platform where, as a business owner, you can invite your customers to come on and give a review. And then you do different things with those reviews. You can either display them on your own website. You can use that as a way to start funneling reviews over to Google or Facebook so that that review can then be reposted over there. The other aspect of online reputation management is kind of like consulting or services, where you can hire a firm to go out and help you manage your reviews so that you drive more business. So they help you minimize the bad stuff and maximize the good stuff. Well, so there are different approaches that folks take to this. Let's stick with the services industry. So the first one is, and this is obviously bad, fake reviews. Like it's so easy to just go onto Craigslist and buy fake reviews. You know, you can buy them for like $1 a piece.
Yeah.
And so people will say, yeah, I'll write you 50 fake reviews to either help your company or trash your competitor. And I mean, clearly unethical. There's also this notion of review gating. So that's GATING, review gating. And effectively what that is you send a survey to your customers and you say, on a scale of 1 to 5, how do we do today? If they give you a 5, the next thing you do is you send them straight to Google or straight to Yelp or straight to Facebook to give a review, because the idea is, well, wait a minute, if you already told me that you had a good experience, I'm going to send you out there to tell folks about your experience. But if you give a 1 or a 2 or a 3, they take that conversation offline and they say, well, wait a minute. If you had a 1, 2, or 3, let me fix this for you. Like, here's a coupon, or here's a refund.
Yeah.
But then you don't ask them to give a review because you're like, well, if they had a bad experience, I don't want them giving, and that's called review gating. Now, almost all of the review platforms out there prohibit that activity, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen.
Right.
So there's, we've got those two different dilemmas going on.
It's interesting because you see this kind of behavior, and it's when you look at online reviews, and we've had people on here before who are experts in SEO, and that's how they got kind of drawn into becoming a review geek, is that because of the power of the ability to drive so much traffic. A lot of times people with that get connected to it, and you can buy traffic from certain places, second tier locations that can boost your rankings for SEO. You can buy positive reviews, you can buy likes, you can buy all of these different things. Totally. Like, is it ethical? Yeah, hell no. Like, it's not ethical.
No, not at all.
So those are kind of the obvious things. But even if you go to places where, like, businesses that are set up to fund that, to like make that happen, they still will have language on there saying that they're doing it in a different way that makes it to sort of slip by and to make it okay.
Right.
So I do want to make a note. Kevin said, do you mean scrub the bad stuff and push or even fabricate the good? Systemic selectivity bias. And so I think you typed that before you were like explaining more about it. But yeah, absolutely. There are different ways that you can get into trouble as somebody who is responsible as an online reputation management company, where you are potentially offering some services that are not above board. Right. But what about the business people though? Because one of the things that with the Review Society is always about like the research of when it's a good time to get a review, a positive review. Like, I know as a speaker or something, if I'm leaving the room, like right after is when I want to get as many reviews as possible, because that is the happiest, the most glowing reviews are going to come right then.
Yep. So there's some things that business people need to think about. So when I talk about this category within what I call the review economy, business people are like owners of businesses or marketing people who are trying to drive more sales by understanding how reviews work scientifically, like understanding the sociology and the marketing science behind all this, and really leveraging that and trying to squeeze every possible penny out of reviews.
Right.
So here are some things that business people will do to try to get more positive reviews.
What will they do, Ben?
Well, so the first one is like you just said, the timing.
Yeah.
So I know that when somebody's standing in my store and they've had a good experience, or let's just say I'm with a software company, and right after implementation, I send my client a cake or a case of beer to celebrate the implementation.
Mm-hmm.
It's at that point that I then ask for the review.
Of course.
And the idea is that, look, when you're on the hilltop, when you're on the mountain, that's when I ask for the review, not 3 days later when maybe you've become a little bit disgruntled with the product or service that you've just consumed. So, is it ethical to hack the review economy that way, or to hack the science of reviews that way? My personal opinion, the timing, I think that's ethical. But I think, again, I think you have to kind of ask the question. You have to do some introspection. Like, is that really in line with my values?
Well, and I would say that, I think it's, you're not going to do something that's not smart by waiting purposefully so you get a less than glowing review,
exactly.
Right? Like, what's your option? You don't choose that. But get the review, and then the thing would be, what my goal then becomes to make sure that it stays that high. What's the follow-up that I need to have to make sure that in a year from now, when it bounces back up and people like me again, and like in that honeymoon period, like, or actually not the honeymoon, it's that weird dip that happens, right? And then it goes back up, right? It comes it comes back up. And if you understand the way that reviews work, it's not a negative for you. It's not necessarily unethical to leverage that, right? But it is a wise idea to maybe use those times when you know that people are not going to be as happy, to make them happy, right?
So the timing of reviews is one thing. Another would be kind of understanding the social pressure behind reviews. So, like, if I'm standing face to face with you and I make a request, there's a social pressure that compels you to say yes to the request. Whereas if we're not together, like I send you an email, or I send you a fax, God forbid, or a tweet asking you to give a review, there's the social pressure isn't there because you're not looking me in the eye. And so again, this is a way that you can hack the science behind reviews to get more reviews, and I would think more positive reviews too, because if you're standing right in front of me, I ask you to give a review,
it's great.
Maybe I'm watching over your shoulder.
Right. Yeah.
So, again, I'm not saying it's unethical. I think it's just, we kind of have to look at our values and check ourselves.
I have to say, it reminds me of when I went to update my passport about a year ago, and they had the little happy face, frowny face, like, how was your experience? But it is as you're leaving, at least in the DC office I went to, it's as you're leaving, but the whole row of everybody that, I mean, you could have just finished talking to that person and they've seen all of your details. They see where that is. They can see your response. And I have to admit that it impacted whether I even wanted to go over there and give feedback. Cause I'm like, if I had a bad experience, am I going to feel better if they all see that I had a bad experience? You know what I mean? Like, it was just better to ignore it. So it's interesting about the placement of things like that. Are you going to get valuable feedback when you place it in such a way that you're not going to get honest feedback?
Again, the shades of gray.
Shades of gray. All right. And Kevin is saying maximizing collection based on timing, product, service specific is okay. Learning how to pick the happy time or the happy customers, maybe not representative of the entire experience. Then you're back to testimonials, the halo effect, standing over their shoulder. Honest feedback should be the goal. Honest feedback should be the goal.
So, of course, Kevin has beat me to the punch here, because my next one on business people trying to leverage reviews is selection bias. So, I love to take I think we're all familiar with this idea of the shop owner. Like, you've gone through the shop, you're thrilled with your purchase. The shop owner can sense this, and he says, "Would you mind giving us a review?" Then you have another customer come in. They're clearly frustrated, but they have to buy something because, I don't know, whatever urgent situation they have. Shop owner can tell that they're frustrated, and he doesn't ask them. to give a review. So again, this is that we talked about review gating earlier.
Yeah.
Is that review gating? Implicitly, it is.
Yeah.
It's not explicitly. It's not as if I'm sending you a survey and then you gave me a 2, so now I don't send you off to give a review. But it's you know, effectively that is review gating.
Yeah, Kevin. I love Kevin. He's so fun. And he's like, "Yep, that's right. That's what it is." But you know what? I put myself in the shoes of the person who's handing out the review. I went to have breakfast at Silver Diner. I'll go ahead and say it, at Silver Diner with my daughter the other day, and we went to have breakfast, and we had a good experience. But there was a really like a couple who they had the same waitress, but just were not happy. You know, I could tell they were not having a good experience themselves. And then as we were getting ready to pull ourselves, pull our things and leave, I looked over and she was very mindfully, carefully going through and filling out the review card. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, boy, I'm curious to see what that card says. And then I thought, should I fill out one too, because I had a good experience and I don't want it to unfairly weigh. And it's so interesting because I don't know that I actually thought a whole lot about it before doing so much with the Review Society and things like that.
Things that make you go,
That make you go,
We make you think.
If I were that waitress, would I wanted to hand the review card to that unhappy couple?
Right.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have.
Yep. Yeah, so Kevin's making some interesting comments here in the chat. He says, every customer should have the equal opportunity to provide a review. Without that, you're creating the bias.
Lies of omission are still lies. That's correct.
But I think I agree with you in spirit, Kevin. But here's the thing: every customer has an equal opportunity to give a review,
but not everyone does it. Right.
But I'm compelling people. Right. I'm asking people to give a review, which again increases the likelihood that they will. But everybody has the same opportunity. It's just that I'm asking you, and I know scientifically that if I ask you, you're more likely to do it than if I sent you away without a request.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's making me wonder, I'm thinking about times when I've gotten my receipt and the cashier circles it on the bottom and they say, if you go in, make sure you fill out about your experience and you'll have a chance to win, $1,000 or whatever.
Sure.
And how many times have we gone and done that though?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's another ethical issue that there's two sides to this debate. So, for example, Google My Business, if you are not allowed to incentivize for reviews, that's just that violates their policy. Yeah. So, but we also know from the science that incentivizing reviews actually flattens the reviews. So the typical shape of a review looks like a J curve, a lot at the top and a lot at the bottom. When you incentivize people to give a review, it actually flattens out the J curve. So there was an article posted in Harvard Business Review a couple months ago, and they did a study on Glassdoor. And what they found is that when they incentivized people to give the reviews, they wound up getting more 2, 3, and 4-star reviews. And so it flattens out the J curve. So again, there's two sides to this debate. Google My Business says, no, you absolutely can't do it. And if you do, we'll penalize you and you're going to fall in their search engine rankings. But the science says, you know what? Incentivizing reviews actually gives you more moderate reviews.
Wow. That's so interesting. And counterintuitive. Counterintuitive, not necessarily something you'd be thinking about.
Yep.
Okay. So how about this? How about review site operators?
Yep. So when we talk about review site operators, we're talking about like the people who run Yelp or Google My Business. We talk about niche review sites. So Kevin, who's been very active in the chat, runs a site called qualitycertified.org. He's a review site operator for realtors. It's actually a lot more than just a review site, but that's one component of their business. And then we have a family of review sites that are running the software that's provided by the Review Society called 100 Reviews. So these are sites like my partners, reviewmyams.com, and some others. So these are people who run sites that show you, here are the star ratings for these vendors, blah, blah, blah. And here, here's the narrative reviews. So A review site operator can introduce what's called systemic bias. So there are platforms out there or review sites that will selectively display the reviews. So they might say, you can bury reviews that are bad,
right,
and surface ones that are good.
Yeah.
There's also a big debate within the review community around Yelp's algorithm and how effective it is at actually identifying fake reviews. So here's a story. I'm a little bit disgruntled with my apartment complex where I live, and they're a relatively new complex, and they don't really have anywhere to review them online. I could create this, and I probably will, but what I could do is I could go to the management company. So the management company that operates my complex has an office, and I went and looked at the reviews there. I looked at the reviews that were what do they call them? Recommended and not recommended on Yelp. The ones that were not recommended, it was so obvious that these were definitely customers. Like they were the things that they were saying about the management company were the exact same things that I was writing. And I'm like, how in the world would you possibly think that this review is fake when it's obviously right on target? And of course, Yelp's algorithm doesn't really look at as much at the language of the review. They look at things like how many reviews have been posted by this person in the last X hours.
You need to, I'm going to interrupt you here. You need to like blur out the identifying details and actually share this on the review.
We can do this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Review Society. Because like that would be fun.
Yeah. So there is a debate amongst people who, again, work in this review economy that is like, why Yelp? Like, why are these ones that are clearly on target? Why have you suppressed these? And why did you choose these? And again, Yelp's algorithm works more on the technical side than scanning the language itself, to the best of my knowledge. I mean, Yelp keeps their algorithm a secret because their explanation is that they don't want to tip off the scammers on what their techniques are, which is a totally justifiable point of view.
If you believe that's...
But yeah, and so, but we just don't know.
Yeah.
Again, that's just that. So that's that systemic bias that, there are some review sites out there that will purposefully conflate the scores or only publish positive reviews. I'm not going to name names here, but there's a site out there that they only publish positive reviews.
Right.
Like everybody on the review site has 5 stars.
So, and then Kevin has a great point. ORMs exploit the hell out of this Yelp algorithm flaw. And that's so true. Yeah.
So yeah, we've been talking about the Yelp's fake review sniffing algorithm. And so here's another thing that kind of came up. And let's rewind a little bit and go back to the Red Hen story and Sarah Huckabee Sanders. So when the Red Hen started getting all of these negative reviews from the Trump supporters trashing the owner for kicking out Sarah, Yelp went into this thing called cleanup mode because they were getting all these negative reviews published. So you have to ask yourself, well, wait a minute. Why, if we were to trust Yelp's algorithm that it can sniff out the fake reviews, did it have to go into cleanup mode?
Right.
To address the issue.
Right. If they were already doing so well,
exactly.
Then what's going on?
Yeah.
What's the problem?
Yeah. So if our algorithm is so reliable that we're going to demote reviews from being displayed because we determined that they're fake, then how in the world did all these fake reviews get published on the Red Hen? And why did we have to go into cleanup mode? So again, I'm not poking Yelp. I'm just saying, listen.
I mean, kinda you are.
There's some ethical issues that I think Yelp in particular needs to think about. Is like, can we rely exclusively on this algorithm to decide what is recommended and what's not? And clearly the answer is no, because implicitly the message is, if we go into cleanup mode, our algorithm didn't work.
Right.
Just
so
saying.
There you have it. Just saying. Hashtag, is it ethical? Hashtag, just saying.
Yep.
I don't know why I keep doing that. Now I've gotten on that fix, and it's just like, I just keep going for it. I'm sorry, you guys.
We're going to make this the standing part of the show, actually.
Yeah.
Is it ethical?
So is it ethical? I actually think that we should, and I think that would be a lot of fun. What do you guys think?
We shall.
All right. great. So last month, the International Standards Organization, ISO, that we're also very familiar with, they released a voluntary standard for online reviews. This is huge news, but why don't you explain to us what this means? What does this mean for online reviews and ethics?
Yep. So just to be clear, ISO is the International Standards Organization. They're based, I think, in Belgium, somewhere in Europe. They are basically a standards developing organization, which means that for lots of different stuff out there, like elevators,
right,
and food safety, they develop standards that are voluntary standards. So they're not enforced by any government, but as you can voluntarily say, we're aligned with this standard and we are basically compliant with the standard.
We meet these ISO standards.
Yes. Now there are hundreds of people who have input into these standards, and the Review Society, unfortunately, as a young organization, we were not involved in this because it takes like 2 years to develop a standard, and we only launched 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So we didn't have a say in it, but I have read the standard. There are 2 companies in Europe who have already agreed to become compliant with the ISO standard. The ISO standard is number 20488. You can actually Google ISO 20488 and find out what the standard says, or at least in principle what it says. It's actually like a 25-page document, which was thrilling reading.
I'm sure.
But so
you read some of it. I have to just say, some of this stuff can get really pretty
geeky, right? Review
geek. Yeah, review geek.
Yeah, that's what we are. But yeah, so much of what goes into this is all about ethics. It outlines so much of what we just spoke about in terms of selection bias and review gating and the systemic bias. So all these things and even online reputation management is addressed within the standard as well. So I think it's a pretty big deal. I think for the first time, an organization that has some weight within the international community has given us this standard that people can raise their hand and say, yes, I want to be compliant with 20488 or not. So one of the things that the Review Society is doing around this, I'm in touch with the chair of the technical committee that wrote this standard.
Wow.
So I'm in touch with him.
That.
Yeah. He lives in Singapore.
No big deal.
And
maybe he'll be on the next review.
And I'm waiting for him to get back with me.
Oh,
and there's Gucci. This happened last time I was in the Italian household.
I know. We were supposed to have handlers that are supposed to be taking care of this.
It's okay.
So, pardon me, in our fancy studio. Oh my gosh.
Hi, Gucci.
Okay, so we actually do have people downstairs.
It's a live studio
while this is
audience
going on, and now we have. By the way, Ben is not really. Well, I guess you're friends with Gucci now.
She doesn't bite.
Right. She doesn't.
Hard.
No.
Okay. All right, Gucci. Have a seat. You're the live studio audience.
She's here.
So I'm in touch with the chair of the standard, the technical committee that wrote the standard.
Yes.
I've read through the standard myself. I've enlisted some members of the Review Society who are some fellow review geeks to read it over as well. And what we would like to do is to basically make some kind of statement on behalf of the people who are running review sites, online reputation management firms and companies, business people who are trying to act ethically and scientifically within the review economy, and basically say, here's what we think about this standard. And I have to say, I've read through it and I have no quibbles with like 99% of what's in there.
Wow.
I have one little quibble, and I think it's just a matter of context.
Have you talked with Kevin about this? Has Kevin looked at it?
Kevin knows.
Have you guys had these discussions?
Kevin knows my feelings on the one item that I take issue with. Yes.
Awesome. So, I'm wondering if we can maybe have a future review chat, maybe going through this a little bit. Yeah, maybe as things get further along. I don't know.
I think it would be a good idea.
So what are you doing these days with the Review Society and how, we look at online reviews and ethics?
Yep. So, I mean, I think by playing the game, is it ethical? We're trying to raise the conversation and get people thinking about this to try to educate people about the ethics of online reviews. I think that starts with reviewers themselves. I think there's way too much vengeance reviewing. There's way too many people who lash out at companies that they don't have any business relationship with. And my personal opinion is that the problem here actually starts with reviewers themselves. And that's going to be a huge undertaking. And I don't expect that we'll ever solve it. But I think the more that we raise this idea that, hey, look, when you review a company that you haven't done business with, not only is that not helpful to other consumers because you don't have a personal experience to share, but and I like to call it like your review bombing or your review vigilantism, you're affecting the incomes of the people who work for that business, and you're totally unconnected to that company. And I just think that that's wrong.
I mean, I think that I think it's interesting that you say that it probably like that the issue around reviewers themselves, that might never get solved, because I look at all of the changes that we've witnessed, it just in the past 5 years with technology and stuff. And I think, what do you think? And when we look at blockchain and using biometrics to like tie to identity, maybe possibly, but you think probably not for a while.
Yeah, I mean, identifying the reviewer is like the first step in ensuring that the review that's given is ethical, because at least then if it's unethical, maybe
at least it's tied to a real human.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, verifying identity is a huge part of verified and trustworthy reviews. Blockchain can actually help with that. And so there are like 4 or 5 interesting blockchain startups that are working on that problem. So we monitor what they're up to, and hopefully something good will come out of it.
Well, I hope you guys will check out the Review Society to participate in ongoing games of Is It Ethical?
Yes.
Which is so much fun, especially when you're drinking. Make a drinking game of it. Right. It makes it more fun.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, the other thing that we're doing around reviews and ethics is that we have a first draft of an online review ethics manifesto. Now, after reading the ISO standards, I kind of think that maybe our manifesto is less important than it was before I saw the ISO standard, because so much of a reviewer's obligations, and there are things within the standard that would make it very difficult for a review site to publish an unethical review. That being said, the ISO standard is a voluntary standard. And so, you don't have to say, yes, we're compliant and we're going to comply with the standard. So we're working on it. I'm still mulling it over. Again, I've distributed the manifesto to folks some other review geeks who I think would have some valuable input. If anybody is interested in getting a copy and having some input, I'm happy to share it with you. But that's the other thing that we're doing around online reviews and ethics.
I love this. This has been so much fun. I think you should come to my home office and Alexandria, Virginia more often, Ben.
Okay.
Like hang out here. I don't know. What do you guys think? Did you have particular pieces of the show today that you had questions around or that you were interested in? Are you really just here for Gucci? And that's what we really are all interested in, is what my smelly poodle who needs to be groomed is doing? Or what do you think? Like, do you think that maybe there are other issues that should have been covered, talking about ethics and online reviews, that we didn't talk about today that we need to cover in the future? Let us know in your comments. Let us know on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, in Crowdcast, and definitely tune in more. Participate in the Review Society. And thank you, Ben, for being here on the show. Do you have any news for people for, I don't know, stuff that's coming up with the Review Society, happenings?
So we talked about the ISO standard. We're working on that. We are working on the manifesto as well.
Yeah.
Is this a leading question? Am I just missing something?
No. I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything. But I want you guys to know that you're in on something that's really important here, because Review Chat is your only live show and podcast dedicated to the art and science of the online customer review. And so we are we're always exploring, looking for new topics and exciting guests, but we have some that are kind of on the short list that we're looking at having on soon. And every time we talk, we end up coming up with more who should be on that list.
This is true.
Michael has a question. Are you developing ethical standards for associations?
That's an interesting question. I would say that there's an opportunity for associations to run their own review sites.
Mm-hmm.
And in those instances, then we would like to hold them to some ethical standards around how they publish reviews and other aspects of the business. So, not specifically, Michael, for associations, but I think
But
the manifesto that
associations,
we're working on would apply to any association that might run their
yeah.
own online review site.
Yeah, there's an interesting. So our very first review chat went in a little bit into sort of the idea behind 100 reviews and talking a little bit about how different associations could be able to use this sort of thing. And so I'll put that in the show notes too, a link to that episode, so that because it talks a lot more about it. That really does deserve its own show. But interesting question.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So you can always catch new episodes of the chat each month. And please check out the Review Society online for more information and to become a member. And we will see you all next time. Thank you for participating, guys. Mwah! Bye. I don't know why I have to sing goodbye. I don't know. I don't know why that happens. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Bye, Anne. Bye, Michael. Bye, Kevin. Bye, everybody who was listening live. Bye, Sandra, if you're still on. And talk to you soon. All right.